They said no one ever really leaves Pine Hollow. But I did. Now I've come back, and people are missing. My friend vanished. My mother lied. And the forest it's watching. This town forgot everything, except me. They say time moves slower in Pine Hollow, but that's not quite true, it just moves in circles. You leave, and when you come back, it's like the place never noticed you were gone. Same rusted gas pumps at the Sinclair station. Same creaking wind chimes outside Merle's diner. Same tired faces that somehow haven't aged a day, though it's been 15 years since I last walked these streets. I only came back because Mom died, or at least that's what the sheriff told me over the phone. No funeral. No body. Just a key to the old house mailed to my address in Denver with a note that said, "It's yours now. Do what you will." I didn't want to return. Pine Hollow wasn't home, it was the place I ran from. But when you lose the last person who tied you to a place, sometimes you feel the urge to stand where they stood one last time, just to see if anything feels like closure. Spoiler, it doesn't. The house looked like it was holding its breath. The shutters hadn't been fixed since Dad put them up in '95, and the white paint had peeled so long it was more gray than anything else. But the porch swing still creaked with the wind like it used to when I was a kid, like it was rocking someone who never left. I stepped inside and was hit with a wave of musty air and silence so thick I could hear the blood in my ears. Everything was where I remembered it, almost too perfectly. A framed photo of me in Little League. The same Afghan folded over the couch. But there was something sterile about it. Like it had been cleaned and staged, but not lived in. My mom was never a tidy person. She was chaos wrapped in cardigans and coffee breath. This place didn't smell like her anymore. It didn't smell like anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of grief or jet lag or the whiskey I nursed until the bottle begged for mercy. It was the quiet. Out in Denver, there's always a hum, a low pulse of life. Out here, the silence is a living thing. It presses against the windows. It breathes down your neck. Around 3 a.m., I heard something creak out by the old barn. I grabbed a flashlight and stumbled barefoot through the wet grass, my breath fogging in the cold night air. The barn door was ajar. I hadn't opened it. Inside, dust danced in the beam of my light. Something had moved. Something recent. And nailed to the inside wall, scratched in jagged letters, "You're not supposed to be here." I stared at it for a full minute before backing out. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I went to the diner. It was the only place in town where people gathered anymore. Merle was still behind the counter, pouring black coffee like he'd been carved into the building itself. He blinked when he saw me, then forced a smile. "Well, I'll be. If it ain't Luke Peterson. Thought we'd seen the last of you." I nodded. "Didn't he plan to come back?" "No one ever does," he said, then leaned in. "But you know how it is, Pine Hollow pulls you back." That stuck with me. Everyone else just stared. Not coldly. Not warmly. Just blank. Like they were waiting for me to say something they already knew the answer to. When I asked about Mom, Merle's face tightened. "Heart failure," they said. "Quiet in her sleep." "Who's they?" I asked. "County coroner." He hesitated, then refilled my coffee. "Don't worry about it. Sheriff handled everything. Sheriff Parker's gone, son. Has been for years. Sheriff Kane runs things now." That was news to me. Kane. That name sat wrong in my gut. I drove out to the sheriff's office after breakfast. Sheriff Kane was a wiry man with gray eyes and the kind of smile that never reached them. He stood when I came in, hand extended like we were old friends. "Luke Peterson. Heard you were back. I didn't tell anyone. Word gets around here. Always has." I told him I had questions about my mom. He gestured to the chair. "I'm sure you do. But the truth is, she passed natural. No foul play. Nothing worth stirring up trouble over." That last part caught me. I never said there was foul play. He tilted his head. "Then there's nothing to worry about." I left without shaking his hand. Something about him crawled under my skin. That evening, I went through Mom's attic. It was the one place I hadn't ventured into as a kid. She always kept it locked. But the key was in her jewelry box, labeled with masking tape and a single word: "Forgive." The attic was dry, but cold. Dust floated thick in the air like time itself had settled there. Among the boxes and broken lamps, I found a trunk. Inside were newspaper clippings, at least 24 of missing persons, all from Pine Hollow. All within the last 30 years. I recognized a few names. Kids I'd gone to school with. One was Jonah Wells, my best friend in 8th grade. Went missing our freshman year. Mom told me he moved. All the clippings had red circles around the dates. All of them had notes scribbled in her handwriting. They forget too easily. Look at the parents. Sheriff knows. At the bottom of the trunk was a cassette tape. No label. Just a black, dusty reel. I didn't even have a player, but I knew one person who might. Mr. Reed's, the librarian. I drove over as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the pine trees. The library was closed, but the side door was cracked open. I knocked, stepped inside, called out. No answer. Just the soft sound of static from somewhere deeper in the building. I followed it. Through the back, past the genealogy section, into the basement stairs I never knew existed. The static grew louder. And then I heard a voice. Mine. A child's version of me. Laughing. Calling Jonah's name. "Simon, man. Don't go in there." It was from the tape. Playing on an old recorder. My heart froze. I backed up. And then I saw it on the wall behind the player, scratched in what looked like rust or dried blood. "She tried to warn you." End of part 1. Part 2 will dive deeper. Luke unravels the pattern of disappearances, realizes his mother was tracking something no one else dared to, and begins to suspect the town itself might be protecting a secret, or something worse. Backhand index pointing right. Let me know if you're ready for part 2, and I'll continue seamlessly. Also, would you like me to provide a YouTube-style title, thumbnail, and description for this story later on too? You said, Oak fan too. ChatGPT said, great. Here's part 2 of the story, The Town That Forgot to Die. Part 2, What the Pines Are Hiding. First-person male POV, suspenseful tone, dark mystery, 5,000 words. I didn't sleep again that night. I just kept hearing my childhood voice echoing through the walls of my mother's house, that high-pitched laugh, the way I said Jonah's name. The thing is, I barely remember that day. I thought we were just playing hide and seek. I thought Jonah moved away. But something in that recording said otherwise. He went into something. Something I was too afraid to follow him into. And now, After all these years, his voice and mine were trapped on a dusty cassette buried in my dead mother's attic. The next morning, I drove back to the library. It was locked, like it should be been the night before. No sign of Mr. Reed's. No sign that door had ever been open. I knocked. No answer. Something told me not to call the sheriff. So I walked around back, found the basement window, and peered in. Just darkness. But I could feel something watching me through the glass, something behind the stillness, like the building itself was aware. I backed off. Instead, I took the tape to an old friend, Mason Carver. He used to tinker with radios and shortwave frequencies, weird Cold War junk. We weren't close anymore, but he still owed me a few favors from high school. When I showed him the tape, he went pale. "Where do you find this mom's attic? Did she ever talk to you about what happened to Jonah?" My blood ran cold. "Wait, you remember?" "Of course I remember. We were all told to forget. Teachers, parents, sheriff. They called it a runaway case, but you and I both know he didn't run." He paused, eyes flicking to the player as if it might come alive. "There were more, you know. After Jonah. Always someone around your age. 1 or 2 a year. Then it stopped for a while. Until last year." I stared. "You're saying kids are still disappearing?" "Not kids anymore. Adults. Just 1 or 2. Quiet. Like they never existed." He hit play. The tape warbled, distorted, and cracked, but there was no mistaking it. My voice. Jonah's laughter. And then something else. Something deep, like a groan from the earth itself. Then silence. Then a whisper. Not either of us. Something. Older. It said, "You left him." Mason looked at me. "Did you ever tell anyone what really happened that day?" "I don't know what happened." "Maybe it's time you remember." I left Mason's place with a burning in my gut. I drove straight back to the old barn. I didn't care if I was losing it. I needed answers. I searched the walls, the floorboards, even the hayloft. And then I saw it, a trapdoor under an old feed bin. Rusted shut. Took me an hour and a crowbar to pry it open. Below was a tunnel, narrow and cold, the kind you only dig if you don't want someone to find it. I lowered myself down. Dirt walls. Wood supports. Old lanterns that hadn't been lit in decades. I walked for what felt like forever, until I found the room. It was carved into the earth, maybe 20 feet wide. Candles had been used here. Burned out stubs lined the edges. In the center, symbols I didn't recognize. And on the far wall, photos. Old, yellowed, taped or pinned to the dirt. Every missing person from those articles my mom saved. Including Jonah. Including my mother. A photo I hadn't seen before. Taken recently. Maybe even a week before she died. Her eyes were open. Blank. And below it was scrawled, "The offering failed." I stumbled out of that tunnel like I was choking on air. I ran back home, shaking, my brain screaming that this wasn't real. That this was some leftover childhood nightmare. But when I got inside, someone had been there. The trunk was gone. The cassette. Gone. The picture of me in Little League ripped off the wall. I called Mason. No answer. I drove back to his place. Door wide open. House ransacked. No sign of him. I drove to the sheriff's office, furious, terrified, out of my mind. Kane was there, sipping coffee like it was any other morning. Lose something, he asked, casual. You son of a, what the hell is going on in this town? Sit down, Luke. I didn't. You know what's under that barn? You've always known. I didn't, but I do now. What is it, a cult, some sacrifice circle? Kane leaned forward. It's older than this town. Older than your mother. And she meddled. That was her mistake. She was trying to help, I said. She kept records. She was trying to protect us. No one needs protecting. Not anymore. He stood. Because the town is paid up. That night, I parked my truck on the old fire road behind the cemetery. I walked through the woods where I used to play as a kid. The pines towered like sentries. I passed the old rope swing, the one we all swore was haunted. And that's when I heard it again, my own voice. Laughing. Calling Jonah's name. But it was coming from above. I looked up. Hanging from the branches, cassette tapes. Dozens. Hundreds. Tied with fishing wire, swaying in the breeze. Each labeled with a name. Each voice, whispering in the dark. I grabbed one. Pressed play. It wasn't me. It was my mother. Her voice, quiet, shaking. They're watching. From the trees. They take what we forget. The town forgets on purpose. But the pines remember. I dropped it and ran. The wind howled. I swear the trees leaned inward. I swear footsteps on branches, like something massive moving through the canopy. Back at the house, I packed. I was leaving. Screw the town. Screw the answers. But when I opened the door to leave, Sheriff Kane was there. Behind him, half the town. Blank faces. Calm. Like they were waiting for church to start. He stepped in. It's time, Luke. Time for what? For you to remember. All of it? End of part 2. In part 3, Luke will be forced to face what he saw as a child, uncover the truth behind Pine Hollow's sinister pact, and decide whether to break the cycle or join it. Would you like me to continue straight to part 3 now? You said, part 3. ChatGPT said, here is part 3 of your dark American mystery drama, The Town That Forgot to Die. Part 3, We Were Never Meant to Leave. First person male POV suspenseful final part 5,000 words. I don't remember walking back inside. One moment, I was staring at Sheriff Kane's weathered face, the next, I was sitting in my father's old chair, wrists bound with nylon rope, surrounded by faces I recognized but couldn't name: neighbors, teachers, the guy who ran the auto shop. All of them calm. Silent. Their eyes didn't blink, didn't flinch. Kane stood in front of me like a pastor, hands folded behind his back, waiting for the moment to begin. You always had questions, he said finally. Even as a kid. That's why your mother tried to keep you close. But that curiosity, Luke, it's dangerous. In Pine Hollow, the less you know, the longer you live. I spat on the floor. Then why bring me back? He smiled, not cruel, not warm. Just, resigned. Because this time, we didn't choose you. It did. Before I could ask what that meant, the lights in the room flickered, and the air grew heavy. Not colder, denser, like I was breathing in fog. The townspeople all turned in unison and began filing out the front door in eerie silence, like they were heading to a funeral they'd attended 100 times before. Kane leaned in close, his breath stale. You've been hearing it, haven't you the laughing the voices in the pines that's not memory. That's calling. And tonight, you answer. I was left alone. The ropes on my wrists slipped loose. I didn't question it. I followed the crowd. Out into the fog-thick night, into the woods that loomed like open jaws. Pine needles cracked beneath our feet. No one spoke. We walked for what felt like an hour, deeper and deeper, until I realized this wasn't just a forest. It was something older. Wilder. The trees weren't trees anymore. They bent in impossible angles. Their bark shimmered. And the stars overhead were wrong. The crowd stopped at a clearing. In the center, a stone altar, black and cracked with age. Symbols carved around the base pulsed faintly. Cain gestured for me to step forward. "Luke, what happened to Jonah wasn't your fault," he said. "You were chosen back then." He was the substitute. It happens sometimes. The forest doesn't always get the one it wants. He turned to the altar. But now it does. I stepped forward. The memories hit me like a train. That day in the barn, Jonah hadn't gone in alone. I followed him. We found that tunnel together. We found the circle. And something took him. I ran. I forgot. My mother made sure of it. She used something to wipe the memory. But it had waited. Waited for me to come back. And I had. The pines rustled violently, though there was no wind. From above, something descended, not with wings, not with limbs, but like a shadow folding into itself. It had no face. No eyes. But it saw me. I fell to my knees. I couldn't breathe. Not from fear, from the weight of its gaze. And then it spoke, not aloud, but into my bones. "You left the gate open." I remembered. That trapdoor, Jonah hadn't opened it? I had. I wanted to explore. I dared him to come with me. When the chanting started, when the whispers came, I ran. I didn't even look back. I left him there. And the forest remembered. Cain approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You can end it. It just needs you to accept it. I'm not going to die for this town. You won't. You'll become part of it. Like your mother." My breath caught. She's alive. Cain didn't answer. Just nodded toward the trees. A figure stepped forward. Woman-shaped. Familiar. Her hair longer. Her eyes wrong. But it was her. My mother. Or what was left of her. She raised one hand and pointed to the altar. Something cracked inside me. Grief, fear, guilt, none of it mattered. I stood. Walked to the stone. Placed my hands on the cold surface. The forest roared. I saw everything. Every offering. Every deal. The founding of Pine Hollow, built not on land but on agreement. Every generation, one chosen. A trade for prosperity, safety, forgetfulness. That's why no one ever left. Why no one remembered. Because forgetting was part of the price. The entity loomed over me. I felt its hunger. Not for blood. For memory. For moments of truth. That was the real sacrifice, our stories. Our pasts. Pine Hollow thrived because it consumed what we should have known. That's why the missing were forgotten. Why Jonah's face faded from every picture. And now, it wanted mine. But I wasn't a child anymore. I yanked my hands back. "No," I said aloud. You don't get to erase me. The forest shuddered. Kane shouted something. The townspeople flinched. You want stories, then here's one. I turned to them all. This town was built on a lie. On cowardice. And you all let it? But I remember Jonah. And I'll make sure everyone else does too. The entity screamed not with sound, but with memory. My vision blurred with 1,000 lives, names, faces. But I held on. I pictured Jonah's smile. My mother's laugh. Mason's hand on the old tape player. The truth was a weapon. I reached into my jacket and pulled out what I'd hidden before I came, the tape. The original one. I had dubbed a copy. Buried the real one in my truck. Now, I jammed it into an old Walkman, pressed play, and threw it on the altar. Jonah's voice echoed through the clearing. Then mine. Then the whisper, you left him. The entity shrieked, unraveling. The clearing shook, trees bent backward. The crowd began to scream, not in pain, but like waking from a long dream. Faces changed. Age caught up with them. 100 years of forgotten guilt rose all at once. And then silence. The forest stopped. I woke up the next morning in the middle of Main Street. No fog. No people. Just me. The library was boarded up. The sheriff's office empty. My mother's house silent. I checked the records. The missing all back. Listed in the paper. Found. Remembered. My mother listed as dead. Buried next to Jonah's family. Like none of it had ever been hidden. Like the town had been reset. But there was no one left. Everyone else was gone. Not missing, released. I guess that was the trade. I live here now. Alone. The pines are still. But sometimes, late at night, I hear laughing from the trees. Sometimes, I hear my voice. Calling Jonah's name. And I whisper back, I didn't forget you this time.